Tag.
Oh, I'm it.
You're it. Which means you're a Stephen King horror villain.
I'm Nelle, and that's Scott. He is ridiculous. Okay, we're going to do a tag video.
We are. Charlotte at Coney Reads tagged us.
Woohoo!
Check out her channel. She's like, you know when somebody like posts a, yay, I got to 100 subscribers, and you look at them, you're like, you're at 200 already. Right, well, she just did a, yay, I got to 500, and she got to 600, and she's only been on BookTube for like 3 months.
Well, it's exciting.
It is. But it's well deserved. She like does history reviews and historical fiction reviews and books, and she's excited, and I think there's a reason why she's grown that quick.
Yeah, she's very well spoken.
She has tagged us in the time and place tag, which was created by Jen Campbell. Jen is one of the bigger booktubers out there, and she is a quality channel. I'm sure that you all know who Jen Campbell is. If you don't, check her out because, as I say, she's a quality. She makes good content.
She does. And the idea of this tag is that we talk about 10 books that
they remind us of a point in our life or a significant event or something like that.
Yeah, that they're fixed in they've made such an impression, they're fixed in time and place for us. We've decided to split it down the middle and do 5 books each.
Yeah, just to make sure that this doesn't become an hour-long video.
Like most of our videos.
Yes.
Sorry.
So do you do one, then I do one? Or do you want to do 5, then 5?
No, we can take it in turns. My first book, I don't have a copy of. It is the 7 Little Australians.
Oh, tell us about this story. Tell us, what's your bacon number, Nelle?
1.
1.
My
Nelle has a bacon number of 1. And if you don't know what a bacon number is,
just Google it. Anyway, I was in a bit of a weird position when I was a small person, and I got to do some stage acting and some TV and movie stuff as well. And the first play that I can really, really remember, because a lot of this occurred when I was very small, like 3. So I don't actually have strong memories of all of it. The first play I can really, really remember, and probably if someone got me started, I could probably still do some of the script, is 7 Little Australians. I played the youngest of the 7.
Little one.
The little one. I was.
But Nelle's very short, so she was actually 13 when this happened.
I was 4.5. I was 4.5 when the run began, and it went for quite some time in Melbourne. And I outgrew the part eventually, and then the girl who played the next child up from me broke both her arms, I think, from memory.
Oh.
And I understudied for her for a little while she recovered. So I had quite a long run with the 7 Little Australians, and was very familiar with the story, and it was a big part of my childhood because obviously I was rescued every night.
So you've sort of like assumed I don't know the story of the 7 Little Australians, and I'm an Australian. Most of our audience aren't even Australians.
So 7 Little Australians is I mean, I guess it's a children's book. It's set around sort of more pioneering times in Australia.
It's like the gold rush.
Yeah, I'm not actually super clear on exactly when.
Yeah, okay.
I do remember lots of period costumes and bustles and things.
Yeah.
And it's about a military man and his wife and their 7 children in outback Australia, and the trouble that the kids get into mostly. And the eldest of the 7 is a young lady who is basically about to get sent away to military school, although that's not what it's called. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's in trouble. She's in lots of trouble.
She's going to boarding school.
And then, spoiler, I'm going to tell you the ending now because it's a very short book. It's a kid's book. And then there's a big storm, and the youngest is out in the big storm, and this girl who's a troublemaker rescues the youngest from under a falling tree, but dies.
Oh.
So every night I would get out in the storm as the youngest.
Now.
And rescued.
I know some stuff about this play from you. The oldest, that was played by somebody famous, wasn't it?
Famous-ish.
Famous in Australia, and by famous in the 80s in Australia.
But the second oldest, Meg, she was the lady who played her was in A Country Practice, and then one of the middle ones was Tamsin West from Round the Twist.
Oh, I thought it was Tamsin West.
No.
So Linda from Round the Twist.
Yeah.
So if you are a kid of a certain age growing up in Australia, you know Round the Twist, and if you are from another country,
sorry,
I don't think it will have translated or aged or done anything well. But
YouTube, it's fun.
I suspect that every Australian who's seen it has gone, oh yeah, strange things happening.
Yeah, and our mum was played by the Sailor of the Century lady, Elise Platt. And if you want some really weird, the dad was also the director. He was played by John O'May, who is the man. He's actually an Australian, despite the terrible accent in the movie. The man in Point Break who says, "We'll get him when he comes back in," right at the end.
Was he asked to put an Australian accent?
I think he'd lived in America for a really long time.
I feel like Australians, when they go to America, then they have to do an Australian accent.
They can't anymore.
They like big it up.
It was bad. But yeah, yes. He's actually an Aussie.
And just to go back to your bacon number now, just because I think it's interesting for our viewers.
It's because I was an extra in Evil Angels, is what it's called in Australia. I think it's got a different name. It's
Dingoes Ate
My Baby movie. So I was an extra in that movie, and Meryl Streep was also in that movie. So she is my connection to Kevin Bacon.
All right. So that's a long way to talk about one book.
So that book is very visceral for me. If I read it, it gives me a very strong experience at that time and place in my life.
Wow. See, my first book is nowhere near as interesting in comparison.
I'm sorry.
I picked The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson as my first book. So we've been running this business that we've been doing for a while, but at some point we decided that I would... Whoops, you're going to lose your books there now. Whoops. Balancing them between two armrests was not a clever plan, was it?
It would have been fine if you didn't move your armrest. But anyway...
It's stationary.
Carry on.
Anyway. At some point we decided that I would do the driving again. I used to do it when we started, and then I stopped, and then I've started it again. But I decided that the driving was really boring the second time around and decided to audiobook. And the very first book I audiobooked was The Black Arrow. And that has basically led to me getting right back into books and into reading. So this is the most important book in my reading career because it has led to 500 other books.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
That's nice. But yeah, predominantly audiobooks. But multitasking.
Yeah.
What's your next book now?
My next book is probably... I feel like as far as time and place goes, this is quite a circular book for me. And it's not a book, it's a play. It is Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. For me, this is a play of my childhood. My grandmother used to read me Shakespeare as bedtime stories because she was that kind of grandma. And so it's a very safe place for me. And Midsummer Night's Dream is obviously quite good for kids. So I do have fond memories of being tucked in bed and having that story told to me. But also, when you and I met, my little brother was performing run of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Really?
So it
Was
really...
he Puck?
No.
Oh.
Oh, was he Puck?
Who was he?
I can't even remember. I remember him being so funny. He floored me with how funny he was. He must have been Puck.
Liam is the sort of guy that you underestimate, and then he tells a joke, and he's
very
so much
quiet.
more funnier because you underestimate him.
Yeah, he's very, very quiet, and then he needs his own set laugh track. He's so funny. But this was probably the first time I realised how funny he was, because he was just coming. It was the end of his high schooling, so he was just sort of coming into his own as a person. But it was not long after you and I had met. We were only just first dating, and Liam had this run of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I went and saw it a couple of times because it was good, and I was supporting my brother. And it just sort of, both of those time and places, like our new relationship and my happy childhood memories.
That's really nice. So as a child, though, you were read it, or you were read like an abridged version?
Probably a bit of both. Like, there was definitely lots of Shakespeare exposure.
Because I feel like there's a lot of smutty jokes in that one.
I should probably skip those. Or assumed I didn't get them.
Love juice in your eye. That's
Well, I just think, I think that's one of the things that, like, Disney has a lot of hidden jokes for grown-ups, and I think that Shakespeare does too. Like, the 4 or 5 year old.
I suspect that wasn't hidden at the time, and I suspect that 500 years has made it.
I just think that kids don't get the jokes that are about things that they don't understand yet. Generally. Yeah.
All right. Well, you've done a book that reminds you of when we met,
mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do a book that reminds you of a period in my life that culminated in meeting you.
Oh.
I started reading the Wheel of Time before I met Nell. I was in an unhappy relationship, and I left that relationship, and then I was single for a little bit, and then I met Nell, and we got together, and all of that. Yeah. And in that period of time, I was reading the Wheel of Time, and I read up to book 8, I think. And then when I met Nell, I put it down and stopped reading it because I got busy. But I was super enjoying it after that book, and I am actually rereading it now. Yeah. But yeah, that is a sort of an epic high fantasy novel of, you know what it's like. It's a fantasy tale to save the world from the dark one sort of story. Yeah. All right, Nell, what's your next one?
Oh, I'm hanging on to it, so I'm going to do this one. So this is my copy of Little Women. It's actually the copy of the Little Women, Good Wives, and Little Men books. I don't remember when I got this, and I don't know if you can see from the, like, it's a bit busted. But this is the book that I reread when I'm sad. And at some point in like year 10, when you're 11, I filled it, the end pages with like happy photos of my friends from high school. So for me, the real time this is connected to is probably in year 10 and 11. I went through a bit of a depression thing, and this definitely got me through. I reread this book a billion times, and just the comfort of rereading a familiar story really helped. So
that's nice. Except you reread a book where one of the main characters sadly dies at the end, and it's tragic, to help you out of depression.
Yeah, I think bawling your eyes out is really helpful for depression.
So it's cathartic.
Yeah, sometimes when I think a lot of times when you're depressed, you're more frozen. You can't necessarily express your sadness, and there's no catharsis. And I like the big cry when she dies was, I think, really helpful. And then if you read all 3, that's not the end. You know, if you read all 3, then you get all the way up to Jo having her boys
Oh, so you read right up until...
Yeah, so I'd read all three when I reread it.
Well, I'll talk about my next two books are going to be sad books too. When I found out that my grandmother was going to pass away, I decided to read The Wind and the Willows, which is not actually on my list. I meant to put it on my list and then forgot. So
that's all right. Oh, you just reminded me of an extra one. I'm going to do an extra one too.
Oh, you're going to do an extra one, are you? Yeah, I felt really quite sad when I found out that she was terminally ill, which I'm sure everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I wanted something to be a bit gentler with me, and I picked The Wind and the Willows, which maybe wasn't the best choice in hindsight, but I really enjoyed that book at the time. It was just what I needed. So it had enough of everything in it, you know. I think A.A. Milne basically said The Wind and the Willows is life. You do not judge the wind and the willows. The wind and the willows judges you. And I firmly believe that everybody should read The Wind and the Willows, whether you are 2 or whether you are 102.
Yeah.
What's your next book, Nell? Or do you want me to pick it up for you?
Yeah, give me one of those.
Do you want that one?
Yeah, that'll do. Cloud Street for me is the end of high school. It just is. It's probably when I read it.
Year 12 text or something?
It wasn't a year 12 text. We did study a Tim Winton, which is pretty normal in Australia. Tim Winton is just
so
modern classic Australian literature, I guess.
That's so weird because, like, if there is an iconic year 12 English textbook in Australia, it's Cloud Street.
We studied Minimum of Two, which was a series of short stories by Tim Winton, but our literature teacher took us to the Malthouse to see a production of Cloud Street.
Oh.
And so I will always remember that experience and also reading the book. Cloud Street is very reminiscent for me of my childhood. Just it's a blended, it's two families living in one house, and that was sort of my experience of my late teens. My mum and my auntie moved in together, and we had sort of all the cousins. It was crazy.
And one of our very first videos, we did our top 5 or our top 10 books of all time.
And this was totally one of mine.
You discussed that then.
Yeah, but probably not anymore. It's probably been bumped by now.
You probably read enough other books to kick it out of your top 10.
But sentimental favourite and will always remind me of sort of the last summer of being in high school and all the things that go with that.
Yeah. So it's kind of a sad, happy time in your life, isn't it? Like the end of high school.
Yeah.
That's probably a good description of the book. It's a sad, happy book.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it's a happy, sad book.
Yeah, it's a happy, sad book.
It's a happy, sad book.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Codes of the Worcester. 2 years ago, almost to the day actually, 2 years ago, we had quite a sad occurrence. But there was a lot going on. It was your dad's 60th birthday. Yeah. And your dad had said that he hadn't gone overseas enough and he wanted to go to the Great Wall of China for his 60th birthday. And he booked a tour that went around China, and on his 60th birthday, he would be on the Great Wall. And so you spoke to him and found out just exactly how cheap it was to do that tour, and everything was included, and we're like, wow, well, we should do that.
Yeah.
And so we did, and then our poor dog Royce started to get sick in the weeks before we were going, and he got sicker and sicker and worse, and on the day we flew out very late at night.
Yeah. And
on the day we flew out, the vet said, you have to put him down. And we were so we were so worried about him because we were like, we've paid for this holiday. Do we cancel it and look after our sick dog? Do we go anyway? The person that we've organised to look after him, will they do the right thing? What will if they put our dog down, what will we feel?
Yeah.
And we knew that when we're in China, they've got a big firewall that is very hard to get out and talk to people on the phone, and we didn't actually know how difficult that would be. And it was horrible. And then on the day, he was very sick on the day we were leaving, and you took him to the vet, and the vet said, no, you've got to, and they didn't even know we're going on holidays.
I think ultimately the vet had been trying to talk me out of my denial for a number of weeks at that stage, and it finally got through to me that I had to say goodbye.
And it was such an emotional day because I had to go into work early so that I could finish my work so that we could get back and fly. And because we work for ourselves, I had to do it because it would stuff up our entire business if I didn't. So I couldn't say goodbye to our dog, and you're in there, and this was just the book that I put on when I found out. It was an audiobook that I was listening to in the car when I found out, and I ended up listening to it on the plane flight to China as well after he had died, and it was so sad, and I needed something funny. And this is a really good Wodehouse book, but it was the wrong call at the time. And I remember I stopped it and then I started it again a few days later to finish it, and it was
easier.
It was much better then. Yeah.
So what's it called?
The Codes of the Worcester.
The Codes of the Worcester.
I was talking about the time. I never talked about the book. I'm so sorry. The Codes of the Worcester is probably the most famous in the Jeeves and Worcester series. It's probably the best. It's got all the typical Wodehouse misunderstandings, but it's just one of the funniest.
Yeah, he was a funny dog too.
He was a funny dog. I remember when we took him down to the park and he saw the stick that was, I kid you not, about 4 meters long, and he picked it up. He was so happy. He could hardly walk.
He was going to take it home.
Yeah, well, see if we can find a picture and put it up in the editing process. I think I've got that picture on Facebook or something. Facebook. All right, Nell, what is your next book?
Can you give me that one? So this is from a time which I thought was really sad and doesn't matter as much now, which is really interesting. I'm probably my most... No?
Oh, I'm sorry. You showed them and then you took it away.
I'm hiding it.
Oh, they could read what it was. They could rewind. Anyway.
Shut up. So, shockingly, before Scott, I had another relationship, which was a disaster, but that went for quite a considerable amount of time. And when it was over, I read Bikram Seth and Equal Music. And this book really finalized the relationship in my soul. I remember reading a line in here that says, "It's not love, not a limb, you won't die," sort of scenario is the line. And I was like, oh, yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Next.
So I'm just a rebound guy.
No, this was... Anyway.
No, that's okay. I was being silly. I was trying to be funny.
It was not funny.
Not insecure.
Yeah. I only married you.
Was that your last book?
I've got one extra one because you've got an extra
bonus one. Oh, I was going to cut that one, but all right. My next book, we've talked about sad shit for the last bit. My next book is one of the happiest times in my life, and it's a sad book. It's Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. My first trip overseas by myself, I was in my early 20s, and I went to the UK and I hired a car and I drove around the UK and I saw various castles and monuments and pubs, and I did not do the typical let's get drunk on a Kentucky tour. I wrote down a list of like
monuments.
I like
ruins to see.
Yeah, I saw Tintagel Castle, and I saw Durham Cathedral, and I saw all sorts of stuff that
nerded it right up.
I nerded it right up.
Yeah.
That was it. But anyway, look, you know, I thought that the UK wasn't that big because look at it on a map next to Australia. It's like a pimple.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, it turns out that actually if you drive from Leeds to Cornwall in a day...
You need a nap.
You do need a nap. That's quite a long drive.
Yeah.
And I did that drive. And I had an audiobook with me. I had Down and Out in Paris and London by Orwell.
Ooh.
And I listened to that. And I listened to the radio, and they've got a lot of comedians and radio plays and stuff on. In Australia, it's just like political talkback or music, and usually interspersed with a lot of ads, which I think might be the case in the UK too. But they have a lot of comedians on their radio over there. So I listened to comedians, and I listened to George Orwell, Down and Out in Paris and London.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
And I saw the north of England and then the west of England, and it was such a happy time because in Melbourne everything is so new in comparison, and then going over there and just seeing stuff that was just like incidentally not even a monument, just like 500 years old, and you're like, oh, okay, you know. Yeah. What's your bonus book?
My bonus book is some Tolstoy. I think it's behind you.
Oh, the Unprepared Tolstoy book. Is it?
So my bonus book is called Family Happiness and Other Stories, which is a collection of short stories by Leo Tolstoy. And it's, for me, connected to the summer before... Well, not even... sort of towards the end of my first year of uni, my grandmother was very ill and she was dying. And we were in the glorious position where we could have her at home when she was very ill. And she slipped into a coma, and my whole family stayed at my grandma's house, and we nursed her until she passed away. And we didn't want her to die alone, so we would take it in turns sitting with her and just talking to her when she was in a coma, and that lasted for 3 days. And I would read to her because she would always read to me, and that was the book that I read to my grandmother. That was the last book I read to my grandmother. And I love Tolstoy, and books and my grandmother are completely connected in my life, and it was just perfect.
And that's why My Wind in the Willows reminded you of your Tolstoy, because it was about grandma's.
Yeah, because it's about grandma's.
Oh, that's a sad story to end with, but it's a nice...
I think it's a happy story. We got to love her in a way that so many people miss out on. And the day she died was so perfect. There was laughter in her house. Her friends were over. We had the good china out. We were all drinking tea out of the good china. And her roses were blooming. Like, it was ridiculously, if you were going to write a corny movie and give someone a perfect moment to die, that's how my grandma got to do it.
Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to tag some people.
Yes.
I would like to tag Nashwa S. She is a Pakistani booktuber. She is super interesting. She's funny. She does great analysis. She's everything you want in a booktuber. And she has a completely different perspective. Check out her channel. It is really good. And I suspect that she will have an interesting
for sure.
bunch of stories. I would like to tag Jen the librarian in this. Jen I just suspect that Jen will have some interesting stories in her life, I suspect.
And I want to tag Danny from Spinelli Speaks because I want to see into your soul.
Who else's soul do you want to see into?
Who else is sold what I want to see?
Well, I had three that I was going to
Oh,
tag.
who are you going to tag?
The last one I was going to tag is Mr. Francie Reads,
Ooh.
who is a Melbourne booktuber who we've only just discovered, but he is excellent, and I would check him out. He is an incredibly good booktuber as well.
And Melbourne folks rule.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be from Australia, it is the only city you're allowed to be from.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of the video.
That's it. Bye.